This is the very nearly fairly current show.
Popteevee.
Hi Jack,
Hello,
selamat datang ke The Fairly Current Show.
terima kasih.
This coming week we have this event called Seksualiti Merdeka, and it's actually the kind of like second year that it's being held.
That's right.
I just wanted to know, in your opinion, right, as one of the coordinators and co-organizers of this event, why is this event being held?
Well, because in Malaysia, there's very few spaces that exist for you to be able to discuss and talk about sexuality rights in all its diversity and how it relates to us in terms of, what it is to be Malaysian. I mean, there's a very strong relationship between your identity and your sexuality and all the other things that comes with it. So, Seksualiti Merdeka is actually providing a very sort of a critical public space to allow and facilitate for these kinds of conversations to happen.
Do you think that a lot of these spaces right now are either non-existent or shrinking or growing, or what are your thoughts about that right now?
Well, it's really hard to say whether it's shrinking or growing. I think it's actually a contradiction.
Meaning?
Meaning there are some spaces which are very much shrinking in terms of regulation and being regulated, and there are some spaces which are opening up because of access to information and access to spaces for expression.
What kind of examples?
For example, the linkage between creative expression and arts and expression and rights. So that's one of the spaces, which is why it's really great that Annex is having this here. Also, the internet is one of those spaces. Which, the proliferation of spaces to talk about stuff. So yeah.
There's this assumption that people in authority like to propagate, which is Malaysians are not ready to talk about a lot of things, and sexuality being one of them. Apa pendapat Cik Jack mengenai hal ini?
Saya rasa kita dah lama cakap tentang pasal seks ni. Bukannya baru.
Right.
I mean, come on. We've all been talking about it in different ways, and it's not just in terms of, organizing or mobilizing or thinking about it in terms of rights. Sexuality is so much a part of who we are as people that, everyone's talking about it, from makcik-makcik kat kampung sampai ke sini kat bandar.
Right. And it's not just about identity, it's also actually about things like health. I mean, recently there was this very strange article that came out about how the AH1N1 virus is somehow linked to homosexuality, or if you engage in homosexual acts or masturbation, so you are more prone to getting it. What are your thoughts about this?
Well, there's always been a psychological sort of framework around sexuality issues, right? I mean, for a long time, gay and lesbianism is under the medical journals. I can't remember the exact name, but the Association for Psychology, Health, and it sort of classifies mental health diseases,
right?
Which everybody uses across the board in different countries. And lesbianism and gay identities have always been under that until quite recently, and BDSM is still under that. So it's
BDSM is
it varies between who's using it, but basically it's bondage, discipline or domination, sadomasochism.
I see.
Yeah.
Right. And are you trying to say that makcik in the kampung are engaged in this kind of BDSM conversations as well?
Well,
mak sini periuk tu.
Siapalah tahu kan? Siapalah tahu. But there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that around sexuality that's being framed very tightly about what it is. First of all, people should just sort of understand it as either identity or behavior or who you're going out with, and that's it. Which is why we're also trying to do this in this gallery, which is an interpretation of sexuality rights from a broad range of issues that affect us as human beings.
Right.
So we're interpreting the Yogya principles, for example. It's 29 principles, from health to family to your social economic rights and your legal rights. So that's kind of
In your opinion, what are key talking points that Malaysians should be aware about regarding sexuality and being Malaysian?
Key talking points. I think,
Or key issues, as it were. Huh?
well, I think first of all, we kind of just have to start looking at sexuality from a framework of rights, not from a framework of merely identity politics or morality and so on and so forth. It's really a question of rights because sexuality is linked to gender identity and a whole bunch of other things.
So
That's one.
Hak asasi lah.
Yeah, so that's one. And secondly, we have to sort of also be aware of how sexuality is constantly being politicized in order to construct us as either the same or outside of the norm or to separate us as individuals, you know. So it's sort of one of the things that becomes a site for contesting and competing rights. So for example, moral policing. It's become like a huge, it's not just a sexuality issue, it's become a racial issue, a religious issue, and who does it affect and who doesn't affect and so on and so forth. Yeah.
From where you stand or your point of view, because you're also a writer as well, right? Kan? Recently there's this whole conversation about Malaysia wanting to set up a green dam policy to regulate internet usage. And one of the things that has been used in its defense is child pornography or protecting Malaysian children from pornography. How do you think this policy stands to affect the discussion of sexuality issues in Malaysia?
Well, first of all, I think there is a general recognition and acknowledgement by the government that the internet is becoming a critical space to explore the boundaries of our rights, right? And secondly, it's very significant that the Ministry of Information that used to be in charge of the internet has now merged with culture. So it's no longer seen as just a resource infrastructure issue, it's already being seen as part of the fabric of who we are. So it's become that. So we have to see this in this movement. Second of all, I also work on sort of on advocacy issues on the internet and content regulation at different levels. And I can tell you that the first argument they will use to shut down the internet is pornography. First of all, it will say that we must protect everybody from the evils of pornography. So that takes women's sexuality as a kind of given, and women are victims, and we must protect everybody from this horror. Second of all, when that's not working out, two things are happening. One is national security. So we have to protect our country from terrorists who are, going online and planning their stuff. That's one. And the thing that's becoming very, very popular is child pornography.
Right.
Because it's a trump card. You throw out, we must protect the children from pornography, and then you can't say anything anymore. Right? If you try and membantah, then straight away, you are for child
you
pornography.
memang suka child pornography ni.
Memang pervert ke apa ke. Then you memang tak boleh cakap apa-apa dah. Even if you were, a human rights activist and stuff, you're not able to argue this.
It's not about dialogue at all, it's about shutting down.
Absolutely. And it's about throwing in a moral justification or moral argument that basically you have nothing to say. That's it. And when you cannot use any other kinds of argument, this argument becomes very effective. So we must be very careful, and we have to be able to develop arguments or to understand what is this thing, because we're not saying that we don't care about it, but we have to kind of be careful to figure out, what is it that you're saying here, and what are you trying to slip underneath this whole conversation.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And semoga kita boleh lagi banyak berdiskusi seperti ini di masa depan.
Diharap moga-moga lah.
InsyaAllah.
InsyaAllah.
The unwelcome word of the week is sempoi. Sempoi. Down to earth, but usually in a good way. Not quite sakai. From the English, simple. His dressing was so sempoi, I didn't realize he was a timber tycoon who didn't want to be a power victim. Sempoi.